The war began with a misunderstanding. The humans thought they were attending a peace summit. The Varnari Empire, a proud and tall alien species, thought humans were there to surrender. They were wrong. Inside the golden chamber of the Varnari, capital Queen Jirala stood towering at 8 feet tall, her armor gleaming red like fire. Her voice shook the walls. "You bring your weakest male to negotiate with a queen?" The human envoy, Captain Elias Monroe, remained calm. He stood barely to her shoulder but didn't flinch. "I'm not here to fight, Your Majesty." She narrowed her glowing orange eyes. "You're not built for much else." The Varnari guards laughed behind her. One whispered, "Humans are small, fragile, barely mammals." Monroe heard it, said nothing. Queen Jirala stepped forward, towering over him. "And some human general thought I'd breed with one of you?" She laughed. "Our genes would tear yours apart." Monroe raised an eyebrow. "Guess we'll never know." The room fell silent. The Queen blinked. Was that a challenge or a joke? She couldn't tell. And that made her curious. The next morning, warships from both sides clashed in orbit. But something had changed. Queen Jirala no longer dismissed the humans as just small. She wanted to see what they could really do, and one name kept repeating in her thoughts: Monroe. Back on Earth's fleet, Monroe reviewed scans. The Queen's fleet was massive, but not invincible. "She thinks humans are soft," he told his crew. "Let's make sure she chokes on that belief." Weeks passed, small battles, sharp turns, unexpected tactics. Every time Jirala thought she understood him, Monroe did the opposite. He would retreat, and then strike. He would surrender, and then detonate a decoy. He wasn't fighting like a brute, he was thinking like a predator. And she noticed. One night, in a high chamber overlooking the stars, Jirala spoke aloud. "That human, Monroe. He does not behave like prey." Her advisors frowned. "He's just a male. A low-class death worlder." But the Queen said nothing. She walked to her private quarters and accessed the Galactic database. She searched human male biology, compatibility charts, fertility experiments, mating history. Her golden brow furrowed. "Impossible," she muttered. But curiosity was growing into something else. At that moment, Monroe was doing the same. He wasn't studying her tactics anymore. He was watching her, the way she hesitated before each attack, the slight change in her voice when speaking to him, the way she never sent assassins directly to him, even though she could. "She's not trying to kill me," he realized. "She's watching me." The war continued, but it wasn't about planets anymore. It became something stranger, a contest of attention, a quiet, unspoken hunt between predator and predator. And then, the Queen sent a message. Private, encrypted, direct. 3 words. "Come to me." Monroe read it once, then smiled. Well, let's see if aliens blush. Captain Elias Monroe read the Queen's message again. "Come to me. No threats, no terms. Just a summons." Most men would have hesitated. He didn't. "Prepare the shuttle," he told his pilot. "I'm going alone." The crew tried to stop him. "Sir, it's a trap. They'll kill you the second you land." Monroe smiled. "That would be the smart move. But I don't think she wants me dead." Hours later, his shuttle entered Varnari space under a silent ceasefire. No guns fired, no warning shots. Instead, the Queen's voice echoed over the comms. "Permission granted. Approach slowly, little human." The palace was quiet. Too quiet. Guards lined the halls, but none touched him. None spoke. They only watched, like prey watches a predator. Or the other way around. Queen Jirala waited in a vast chamber of obsidian stone and glowing red glass. She stood tall, arms folded, her expression unreadable. When Monroe entered, she turned but didn't speak. "You called," he said casually. She studied him for a long second. Why did you come? Curiosity. And? He smiled. Maybe I wanted to see if giants can be gentle. Her lip twitched. A smile? Maybe. She circled him slowly. 8 feet of raw muscle and grace. You've made a mess of my armies. You flatter me. You've embarrassed my generals. They were easy to embarrass. She stopped right behind him. He didn't turn. She leaned in close. Are you afraid, human? He turned slightly. Eyes met hers. Should I be? Her gaze flickered. Yes, but I'm more interested in why you're not. They stared at each other for a long moment. No orders, no guards, just silence and tension thick enough to cut. Then she said something no one expected. Your DNA is surprisingly resilient. Is that why I'm here? Monroe asked. Partly. I want to test a theory. And if I say no? Jarala tilted her head. Then I'll simply watch you walk out and regret it later. He raised a brow. Is that your version of flirting? She didn't blink. Is it working? Outside the chamber, her guards whispered. Why is he still alive? Why is she smiling? Why hasn't she crushed him? But deep inside, Queen Jarala wasn't thinking about war anymore. She was thinking about something much stranger. Possibility. Back inside, Monroe leaned on the edge of a stone table. So what exactly is this test? She stepped forward slowly. I want to know what happens when dominance meets unpredictability. He smirked. I'm starting to understand why your advisors look nervous. She walked to him. Closer. Closer. He didn't move. Neither did she. The space between them was now smaller than the space between fear and fascination. And then, she placed one hand on his chest. Your heart is steady. He looked up at her. Yours is not. Queen Jarala stood in silence. Her hand still rested lightly on Monroe's chest. Her breath was steady, but her eyes betrayed something else. Conflict. She had conquered systems, broken warlords, crushed rebellions. But this human? He didn't flinch, didn't bow, didn't try to impress her. And that made her unsure. You do not fear me, she said at last. Monroe tilted his head slightly. You expected fear? I expected obedience. He shrugged. You invited the wrong species for that. She took a step back, her long red cape flowing behind her like fire over stone. You know why I called you here, she said. I've read between the lines. She paused. Then answer plainly. If our two species were to unite biologically, what would you expect in return? Monroe raised his eyebrows. Are we talking politics or genetics? Both. He crossed his arms. I don't want land. Not even tech. She looked surprised. Then what? A choice. Explain. You rule because they fear you, he said, nodding toward the chamber walls. I want to see what happens when they follow you. Not because they must, but because they choose to. Jarala stared at him for a long moment. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not as a queen, not as a weapon, but as a woman. Your terms, she said, are strange, but not unacceptable. She walked toward the throne, took a seat, then lifted her hand and gestured to the space beside her. Come. He stepped forward, but slowly, not because of fear but respect. He stood beside her, looking up. You're certain? Jarala's lips curled slightly. Do you know what happens when Varnari royalty claims a mate? War? Yes, but also transformation. Moments later, the palace was sealed. The guards dismissed. What happened in the chamber would be recorded by no one, except the two beings inside. The next morning, Jarala stood on her balcony in silence. She looked down at the city, at the stars, Her expression was calm, but her body felt different. Inside her chest, something had changed, a warmth, a strange rhythm, and something else. Behind her, Monroe stood with a datapad in hand. "I suppose this means peace talks are on hold?" She didn't answer, just turned, met his eyes, and said, "I believe I've entered a new war, inside myself." Back in the Capitol's medical wing, high-level scans were running. Technicians panicked. "This shouldn't be possible. It's too fast. Her body is adapting." The chief medic gasped. The human's DNA, it didn't just survive, it overwhelmed the odds. They ran to report to the Queen, but she already knew. She placed a hand gently on her abdomen, and for the first time in her life, Queen Jarala wasn't laughing. She was wondering what it meant to be changed by something smaller than her. Queen Jarala had not fallen ill in 20 years. Her body was engineered, perfect, durable, and evolved to survive the harshest climates of the galaxy. But now, something was different. She stood in the center of her private chamber, surrounded by silence. Her breath was steady, but her heart wasn't. It beat faster than normal. Her skin glowed faintly. Her senses, sharper. Too sharp. "Something's wrong," she whispered, then quickly corrected herself. "No, something's changing." She ordered a full bioscan. The royal medics arrived in seconds. They bowed, nervously. Jarala never allowed weakness in her court. But this wasn't weakness, this was something else. As the scan finished, one of the technicians looked up, pale and trembling. "Your Majesty, the results are clear." She raised an eyebrow. "Speak." "You're pregnant." Silence. Thick. Unnatural. Even the guards outside seemed to stop breathing. Jarala didn't blink, didn't move. She simply repeated, "That's not possible." "We've run it 5 times, the medic said. "It's true. The human's DNA bonded with yours." Jarala turned to the balcony again. Snow fell lightly beyond the glass. Inside her chest, her heart pounded harder now, not out of fear, but instinct. She summoned Monroe. Within minutes, he entered the chamber, calm as ever. "You sent for me." "I'm with child." He blinked once. "I see. And it's yours." He nodded slowly. "Also what I expected." She narrowed, her glowing eyes. "You expected this?" "I hoped," he replied with a small smirk. "You're insane. You're glowing." She paused, then glanced down. Her body, always powerful, now carried an extra heat, a different balance. Jarala moved close to him, closer than before. "Do you know what this means, human? That something impossible just became real. It means our child will be hunted, feared, worshipped, or worse, used." She turned away sharply. The fire in her voice returned. "There are factions in my empire that will see this as a threat. Not just to my rule, but to our entire race." Monroe stepped forward. "Then let's not make it a secret." Jarala turned back, shocked. "You'd announce this?" "I'd protect you, and the child." She studied his face, the calm, the boldness, the certainty. "You don't fear what this changes?" "No," he said, "because this isn't the end of something. It's the beginning." In the medical wing, whispers spread. The Queen was carrying a hybrid, a new life, and in the back halls of the Varnari Senate, plans began to form. We must remove the threat. Quietly, before it grows. But back in the royal chamber, Jarala stood stronger than ever, for the first time not as a queen, but as a mother. And behind her, Elias Monroe stood tall, not to challenge her throne, but to guard it. The Varnari Empire had known power for centuries, but it had never known uncertainty. Now, Whispers filled the golden halls. The queen is carrying a hybrid. A child with human blood? Unnatural. Dangerous. A threat to our lineage. In the shadows, a secret council gathered, nobles, generals, scientists. They bowed before no one and except each other. We must act before it's too late, one hissed. She's blinded by emotion, another growled. She has forgotten the laws. Then let us remind her. Back in the palace, Queen Jarala stood by a window, one hand resting gently on her abdomen. The air outside was cold, but her body burned with something new. Not anger, not fear, fierce protection. Monroe entered quietly holding a datapad. Intercepted message from your own command. She read it. Her eyes narrowed. They want to remove me. And the child, he said. They're planning to frame it as a biosecurity measure. Cowards. She turned toward him. They forget who I am. Remind them, she shook her head. Not yet. If I destroy them now, the people will call it panic. Then what? I need loyalty. From someone they'll listen to. She stepped forward, towering above him, but her voice was low. Will you stand beside me? Not as an outsider, but as my equal. Monroe met her gaze. Not as your general, he said, as your mate. Word spread fast, too fast. A formal announcement was made. The queen had chosen a human consort, a protector, a father, a political shield. To the public it was bold, to her enemies it was dangerous, and to some, unforgivable. The rebellion didn't come with explosions or open fire. It came quietly, a poisoned cup, a corrupted guard, a sabotaged shuttle. But Monroe was faster, smarter, deadlier. One night, 3 assassins entered the queen's chamber. Only one left alive. Monroe dragged the survivor into the council chamber, dropped him to the floor. He said it was ordered by someone inside this room. The nobles said nothing. Jarala rose from her throne. You wanted a pure heir. You'll get nothing now, except war. Later that night, Monroe stood on the palace balcony. Jarala joined him silent. They're afraid, she said. Afraid of what the child will become. Good, he replied. Fear is a great teacher. She looked down at her stomach. He hasn't even been born yet, and already, he's changing. History. He's his mother's son, Monroe said. Jarala smiled, genuinely for the first time in weeks. In the sky above, warships moved into defensive formation, but inside the palace, something stronger than steel was forming. A family. The Varnari healers had no words. The queen's child was growing. Too fast. Faster than any Varnari heir before. Faster than any recorded hybrid in the archives. His heartbeat echoed stronger. His vitals were beyond expectation. He wasn't just surviving inside Jarala. He was thriving. This shouldn't be happening, the chief medic whispered. Human genes are too unstable. This fusion, it defies logic. Queen Jarala sat calmly, hand over her belly. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes burned with one truth. It's happening, and it will not stop. Monroe stood nearby, silently watching the monitors. He didn't speak, but inside, a storm swirled. This child was real, alive, powerful, a living symbol of everything they both risked, and everything the Empire feared. Outside the palace, tension boiled. Riots, petitions, massive Varnari protests chanting, "No half-blood shall rule, purity or extinction." But inside, Queen Jarala stood tall, pregnant, unshaken. Let them scream, she told Monroe. Soon they will kneel. As the weeks passed, the queen's strength didn't fade. It multiplied, her senses sharpened. Her skin glowed with heat. Even her voice carried a deeper resonance. He's not weakening me, she whispered one night. He's evolving me. The scientists called it a mutation, a genetic leap, an impossible hybrid of Deathworld DNA and Varnari royalty. But Monroe had a simpler word: legacy. Then the day came. The Queen collapsed during council. Guards rushed, medics scrambled, the palace shut down in red alert. In a high-security birth chamber deep within the palace, she fought through the pain, silent, powerful. Her body refused sedation. "I will not be numbed," she roared. "Let me meet my child awake." And then, a cry echoed through the golden chamber. It was not weak. It was not fragile. It shook the walls. The room froze. Even Monroe stood breathless. He stepped forward slowly and saw him, a child with bronze skin, glowing red-gold eyes and hair the color of fire. But more than that, he stared back at his father with awareness, not confusion, recognition. Jarala held him gently, her massive arms cradling the infant, like a blade in silk. "He's perfect," she whispered. Monroe knelt beside her. "He's the future." Outside, rebellion still stirred, but rumors spread faster than fire. "The child has been born." He screamed like thunder. His eyes burned with light. And one terrified general whispered, "That baby is already stronger than me." The High Council demanded to see the child. Jarala refused. "He is mine," she said. "And anyone who dares come for him will see what happens when a queen becomes a mother." They called him an abomination, a threat, a mutation, a mistake. But the child was none of those things. He was alive. And every heartbeat he took shook the foundations of the galaxy. At only 1 month old, he sat upright. At 2 months, he could speak in Varnari and English. At 3 months, he lifted a royal guard off the floor with one hand. "He is not just a child," whispered one palace advisor. "He is a force." Queen Jarala named him Rayan, meaning born of fire, destined for stars. She raised him not just with strength, but with the quiet calm of purpose. Monroe trained him in tactics, in humanity and compassion, and Rain listened to both. From his mother he learned how to command. From his father he learned why. The High Council grew desperate. They tried to pass a law to exile the child. They failed. They tried to bribe the guards. They vanished. They sent assassins. None returned. One day when Rain was barely a year old, he walked into the grand hall during a council session, not crawling, not hiding, walking, confident. He looked each noble in the eyes, and they looked away, a toddler, and yet they feared him. He stood beside the Queen's throne, one tiny hand resting on her arm. Then he spoke clearly. "If you fear me, maybe you shouldn't have taught me that fear is power." The room fell dead silent. No one laughed anymore, not even the loudest critics. Later, as night fell over the twin moons of the Varnari capital, Jarala and Monroe stood on the palace balcony, watching Rayan sleep peacefully between them. "He has no idea how much they fear him," Monroe said softly. "He will," Jarala replied, "but he will not become them." She looked at Monroe. "He will become more." Far away, other alien species watched carefully. Some admired, some trembled. Some began to prepare for what this child might one day become, a symbol of peace or a warning. But to the Queen, he was something much simpler. Not a weapon, not a miracle, not a ruler, just her son. And for Monroe, who had faced war, loss, and loneliness, Rain's first word had not been war or power. It was Dad. The galaxy didn't know what was coming, but it would remember this truth forever. The Queen laughed at the idea of breeding with a human, until the day her son made the stars bow.